Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cloud Architects Podcast. We are in not so sunny Redmond today, part of the MVP Summit. That's not really what we're going to be talking about. We're at the Redmond Reactor, so you may hear some background noise in the recording. It's because we're in a public space and just doing what we do. Super excited today. We're going to be talking Exchange. Exchange Server and some of the recent announcements regarding Exchange, and really excited about our guest. And I was just saying to him earlier that I can't believe we haven't had him on on the podcast. In the 70-something episodes we've done, given that he is such an influential person in the Exchange community and really has been doing this for such a long time. So, Jeff, welcome to the show. Really glad to connect.
Thank you, Chris.
For those who don't know you, and I doubt there's anyone listening to this who doesn't know who you are, but could you do just a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and
I am a Exchange Online, Microsoft 365 MVP and consultant. I have a consulting company in the Bay Area, and I've been working with Exchange. Actually, before it was Exchange, I worked with Microsoft Mail 3.1 and worked my way up from there. I run write the EXPTA blog, and I've been just plugging away at Exchange for a long time. It's something that I'm very passionate about.
Yes. It's always, we don't get to do very many Exchange-specific episodes anymore, right? And especially when we think, one of the nice things about being kind of here in Redmond on campus this week is catching up with everyone, right? I think we had a dinner last night, and we had 7 or 8 folks who, we've all known each other for more than a decade, kind of doing this type of work, right? It's a great kind of community, and it's really, even after all this time, it's great to still be able to learn from each other, right? Because you just never know it all. Thanks again for taking the time.
Me.
So what we wanted to talk about today, I think, really topical for where we are today, right? Last week, Exchange 2013 went end of life, and I think even after all this time with Microsoft sort of lifecycle management on products, a lot of folks don't quite understand what end of support really means, right? What are you seeing? Are you still seeing customers with Exchange 2013 actively running their environment? Because I can tell you that I'm working with a customer right now, a very large customer, who has Exchange 2013, and they've just kind of gone, we need to do something about this.
Right. Yeah, I have quite a few customers who are running 2013, have been thinking about moving, either upgrading or moving to the cloud. Some of those customers have waited because they just didn't know what the landscape was going to look like for Exchange Server. Over time, they've become a little more, or I would say less reticent to go to the cloud. So a number of those customers are migrating to Exchange Online now. There are some that are still migrating to on-prem. They have business reasons or contractual reasons that they have to remain on-prem, or legal reasons even sometimes. And so they're continuing on that journey. They're now upgrading, but there's it causes some challenges to get to the latest version, and there's some requirements that have to be met first. So.
Right. Yeah. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. Right.
Exactly.
And it's interesting you say sort of the unknown landscape, right? Because really, we current version of Exchange is still Exchange 2019.
Right.
We don't know officially about any new versions or anything like that, right? So that's kind of still the state of play is where do you go? Is you either going to go to Exchange Server 2019 or you're going to go to Exchange Online. My opinion on this, and I think Nick and I have talked about this on the show before, is that unless you have very specific regulatory reasons or legal reasons, contractual reasons are quite common as well, to host your own email. They really, you can't do a better job of it than Microsoft can.
Yeah.
Right? And so, again, I think it's worth reviewing those policies, right? If you're an organization who is possibly on Exchange 2013 today, reviewing those policies and kind of understanding exactly when that decision was made, whenever it was made, whether it's still relevant in today's world, right? It's funny how the technology cycle is sort of shortened so much now. Things are spinning out of control. but policies don't get reviewed or updated,
Right.
almost nearly as often.
Yeah, that's something that I work with customers quite a bit, is to review those policies and find out what are the actual reasons you think you need to be on-prem.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time to update those reasons.
Right.
There's just not very many reasons at all to stay on-prem.
Right. And I think part of that is when you look at legal stuff. Right now, I'm not a lawyer, but very often the understanding of what the law or the compliance thing that you're trying to comply with, it's open to interpretation, right? And sometimes customers interpret that incorrectly, or in a way that is convenient for them to say, well, hey, we've got this whatever thing that we need to comply with, and it's forcing us to stay on premises, when, well, maybe it doesn't, right? So a really good tip as well when you have that situation is, well, get someone who actually understands this stuff, not me, but an actual person who deals with, the law and can interpret that for you in your locale or region to help you with that. Because again, you may be interpreting that incorrectly, and you're essentially just creating a lot of technical debt for yourself, I think. So.
And, something I've seen that's come up lately is business insurance. I'm finding some customers, if they are running Exchange on-prem, their business insurance triples in cost. Because of the vulnerabilities and the amount of effort that it takes to keep it up to date and make sure everything is running smoothly. That's a risk to them, and insurance companies are all about assigning risks.
Yes.
So it is more risky. It's going to cost you more money. So
and that's a very good point. I've had to deal with this myself, right? As a consultant, I'm working in different parts of the world. I have worked in the US before as a consultant. The insurance requirements are pretty interesting, and it's great when, obviously I'm all in on the Microsoft Cloud, right? So I know Microsoft complies to all of these things, so it's very easy for me to go and say yes to all of the controls that get asked in the insurance forms. But it would be a lot harder if you weren't, right? If you're trying to manage all that stuff yourself, how do you know, like, your data center is whatever compliant and all of this? So very good point as well. So, and I think probably the biggest reason, right, in making sure that you're up to date, and we talk about updating and apply patches and all this stuff all the time, is the security side of this, right? And so Microsoft, there was a recent announcement. Now, I saw the announcement come through on tech community, but I think it's probably been circulated pretty widely about throttling and blocking of email from older versions of Exchange. And this is one of those things, again, where people have lost their mind.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Because of two things. Because as always, and I take issue with the tech press in some instances, because a lot of the times they come up with these clickbaity headlines, and the security press is very good at that. Oh, well, Microsoft have done it again.
Yeah, make it sensational so that it gets people to
exactly. And everyone likes to hate on Microsoft for some reason. I think you need to, obviously, where criticism is due, be constructive about it. But where praise is due, you need to also kind of be mindful of the fact that, hey, they've done a good job in other areas, right? But anyway, they've run with these headlines of like, well, hey, do you have an old version of Exchange? Guess what? You're not going to be able to use it anymore. Well, that's not entirely true, right? And I think it's worth spending some time in this conversation to kind of talk about exactly what this means today. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds. Like, we don't have a magic 8-ball in front of us that we can kind of shake or roll or whatever. And we know that Microsoft does make policy changes from time to time based on customer feedback. We saw that with Basic Auth and how long it took them to disable that and turn that off, right? Because customers pushed back. And I think the Outlook and Office macros thing from last year was another one of those very interesting, like, yeah, we're going to do it. No, we're not going to do it. Yes, so it's really, we're not going to speculate. We're not going to kind of come up with what may happen in the future. But I think what's important for us to do is look at the facts of what the announcement means today, what it means for those customers who may fall into that sort of bucket, right? I think the first myth that we need to sort of dispel here, right, is this is not. So firstly, if you have an old Exchange server, it doesn't automatically mean that you're not going to be sending email, be able to send email to Exchange Online, right? This is something that is going to be enforced over time, isn't it?
Yeah. So let me start by explaining what the announcement was,
Right.
and give some background. So Microsoft receives a few emails a day. They, through their service, they're able to determine that some of these bad emails and bad actors are coming from what they can identify as Exchange servers that are no longer in support. Those are called persistently vulnerable servers because they are not going to receive any more updates. And so they are going to be persistently vulnerable. They could be used by the bad actor themselves to send emails into Exchange, or they can be corrupted. They could be compromised and be used as a vehicle to get these emails in. So Microsoft, getting the amount of emails that they do, they're able to identify the sources that these are coming from and where they're focusing on right now. And this is what the policy, or what the new implementation is going to be, is they're going to start with Exchange 2007 servers only, and only for those servers that are sending on inbound cloud mail services enabled connectors. So what that means is, if you're familiar, of course, Exchange 2007 was around before the hybrid configuration wizard. But if you're familiar with the wizard, when you run it, it creates a send connector to Exchange Online that has attributes on it that says that it is cloud mail services enabled, turns on all the TLS settings, and this allows your on-prem hybrid server to send emails from on-prem to the cloud and bypass a lot of the safeguards that most emails would go through that are anonymous or coming from a partner.
Because that's really treating the email as an internal email.
Exactly.
Isn't it, right?
It's the whole idea is to try to make it
right.
similar to like a Windows Trust.
Right.
So when the email comes in, it's trusted and therefore bypasses a lot of the checks. And that's what allows those emails to come in and make sure that, an on-prem user sends a email to a cloud user in the same tenant, in the same organization, and it doesn't end up in their junk mail.
Right.
And when you see it in Outlook, it shows as their name rather than email address, because it's trusted, right? So they're specifically targeting 2007 at first, and only emails that are coming in on those connectors. Okay, we're not talking about anonymous emails. Right. So that doesn't mean your server is not going to be able to send mail. It just won't be able to over time. It will get consistently throttled more and more and more until it's eventually blocked over, I think it's 30 days. So
right.
Close to that.
Right.
So that is in essence where we're starting. Now we're going to see how that goes, or they're going to see how that goes with Exchange 2007, and then they're going to extend it to other out-of-support servers. So you'll see it happening with 2010, 2013 now that 2013 is out of support. And you were talking about support. Support just in this case means when it reaches the end of life support, it's no longer going to receive any more security updates. During extended support, it doesn't get feature updates. It still gets security updates. And I think that lasts on the life cycle about 10 years after it's released. Or maybe it's 10 years after the last CU or service pack. Sorry, have to look that one up.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
It's technical. But the once it gets into that state and it's no longer getting updates, then obviously the bad guys are still hacking at those servers trying to compromise them.
Right.
So they are a vulnerable server, and they're considered persistently vulnerable because there are no updates that are going to come out for those.
Right. I like the usage of that word. I think it kind of describes it. I mean, it does paint a bad picture, but it's an accurate description, right?
Yeah.
And what's also interesting to me as well is there's the same press that kind of jumped all over this.
Yeah.
Are also the first to get in line when there is a vulnerability or some sort of, right? They're the first ones to say, oh, well, you know what, guess what? Exchange has got another, RCE, or there's another CVE for Exchange. So they're the first ones to say that Exchange, can have
Right.
holes or there are security challenges with Exchange. But then they're not supportive necessarily of the fact that Microsoft is saying, okay, well, hang on, let's actually start doing something about this, right? In a way that is helpful.
Right.
So as far as the enforcement goes, I'm looking at the table on the tech community post now, and there's sort of the table that describes how the enforcement stages will go, and I'll post a link in the show notes. This isn't something, again, that also is just going to happen from day one. There's a reporting phase to this whole thing, which lasts 30 days. So for the first 30 days, everything's going to be okay, except as the admin, you're actually going to get some reports to tell you, hey, Mr. Admin, you have an old Exchange 2007 server that is sending email to Exchange Online. If you don't do anything in the next 30 days, we're going to do something about it. So from when this actually starts getting enforced to when you actually start getting completely blocked, that's a 90-day window, which is a lot of time. It's not just an on switch that says 0 to hero.
Right.
Well,
that's going to be displayed in a dashboard that's in the Exchange Online portal. I don't know how many people are going to go there to notice that in the first place. So what it's going to do is red line something saying you've got an Exchange 2007 server or a 2010 server or a 2013 that is sending emails on this secured channel into inbound channel to Office 365, and you need to upgrade it. It will give some guidance and tell you what you should do. If it's 2016 and it's beyond 2 CUs back, it would show as a warning. And advise you to upgrade to the latest CU. So there's some guidance there, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And if they're not reading the portal, they're not going to know about that. And I can guarantee probably the majority of those people that are running 2007 servers that are using those old connectors that were created 20 years ago are going to have there's nobody monitoring those. So the way that it's going to become apparent to them is, let's say I've got that 2007 server, I'm using it for an internal relay. All of a sudden my faxes and copiers and things like that, application servers that are on-prem that are relaying through Exchange, those emails are not going to get delivered, or they're going to get delivered slowly. And hopefully over time, this succeeding length of throttling will eventually drive people to look at it and go, hey, what's going on? I'm not getting my backup reports or whatever. And, that will draw their attention to it. And then if they should go to the portal or, then they'll, oh, look at that. I got a 2007 server, didn't even know I had.
Yep.
I see a lot of environments where the admins have left, right? Long time ago. And Ed in the mailroom is running the Exchange server. He's responsible for putting patches on it, and nobody even knows that this thing is running. It's on running under a desk or something. So they may even be surprised to know that it's there.
Right. And so there's an interesting thing to be said for environments that are still running, particularly Exchange 2007, because this should be the least of your worries.
Yeah.
Right? Ultimately, if you're running Exchange 2007, you're probably still running Server 2008 or I don't even think it can run on 2012, can it?
No.
So you're running Server 2008, which has also been end of life and end of support for some time now.
Right.
That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
That's arguably, again, a bigger problem for you than, oh, hey, my mail's not working, because you have all sorts of things that you're opening yourself up to, in that. And if you were trying to or have been trying to upgrade to later versions of Exchange, you're not going to be able to go even to 2013 if you still have 2007 in your environment.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
So folks are making a big deal about this. Firstly, if this is you and you're in this situation where you still have 2007, yes, we understand you love 2007, right? Personally, I love 2010. I thought Exchange 2010 was the best Exchange server ever built. But we've moved on from that. Obviously, things mature, code matures, all of those things. We can't just keep running these things, even though there may be nothing wrong with them. We at some point we need to upgrade, right? You can't expect your 69 Chevelle to have Apple CarPlay, right? Things like that.
Yes,
technology moves on, and we move on. So I get it, but you need to start looking around you, because if your Windows version is out of date, that's a problem. If
Right.
you're running an old version of ESX, there was some massive ESX issues just a
Absolutely.
couple of months ago.
Yeah.
With ESX versions that haven't been upgraded, and the hypervisors have been hacked, right?
Right.
This is a symptom of a much bigger problem in your environment than just
Yeah.
your Exchange server being old.
Yeah. Ultimately, Exchange Online is they're trying to protect the service.
Right.
The majority of their customers are running this their service. They need to protect their customers the best way they know how. They are aware of these servers that are vulnerable, and they can choose to block them.
Right.
Now, that's only on those inbound, special connectors. That doesn't mean that a 2007 server can send anonymously. I mean, what they're doing is they're trying to protect the service and drive awareness with the admins that are on-prem that you're running these bad servers, these servers that are vulnerable. And it's in your own best interest to upgrade that technical debt.
Right. And I think it's in the same vein as running basic auth on things, right? Because if you're running 2007, you're running basic auth. You're probably running IMAP and POP and all of these other really easily compromisable protocols, right? If you think about the stats of like how mailboxes and things are getting compromised, it's IMAP usually because those old protocols don't support MFA. They're easy targets. How many just billion credentials are out on the internet at the moment? Like I mean, it's every week, right? Even in Australia, I've lost track now because you know what I mean. Like, because what's interesting is when I lived in the US, I mean, these compromise events and data breaches happen all the time, everywhere, right? But in the US, they don't get sensationalized quite a lot. I mean, that doesn't make the news, right? Maybe when Yahoo got hacked or whatever,
right?
Or when LinkedIn got breached in like 2012, that kind of made the news. But in Australia, when a big company gets breached, man, it's all over the place, right? And everyone's talking about it. And these credentials are getting leaked, and you're running a protocol that you can't even secure through MFA, and it happens, right? I've done compromise assessments on customers with, even more modern versions of Exchange running old protocols that have been compromised. It's problematic.
Right.
So that's the first thing I wanted to say about this. Second thing is I think a lot of folks are taking this to be a big stick to move to cloud services, right? Or like a big Microsoft's forcing you to upgrade in some way. And in a sense, I think yes, they are. But I think the reason behind this isn't necessarily a revenue push as much as it is a security push, right? Let's make sure that the environment that we're managing for our customers is as safe as it can be. And if you're running these old things, well, maybe we don't want you connecting into our environment, right? If you turn up to a restaurant, you're not wearing shoes, and you know what I mean, you're wearing like, ripped jeans and half, they're not gonna let you in, right? It's the same concept. Like they have the right to protect the customers that are willing to pay and dress appropriately. I see it as the same thing. So I think it's a lot of people are making a lot of fuss about something that isn't necessarily intended that way.
I think it's ill-informed.
Right.
They think it's shutting off all Exchange, traffic from your server. That's not the case.
Right. I think it's important to understand that even if you're not on Exchange 2007 and this doesn't affect you right away, this should be a warning call for you if you're on Exchange 2010 or if you're on Exchange 2013. And we know there are customers like that. I know of many of them myself, right? Start thinking about where you're going to go with this, right? Yes, I think, as we said at the beginning of the conversation, perhaps that future state is a little bit unclear, but a hybrid state is perfectly acceptable state, right? You don't have to be all in the cloud or all on-prem. You can be in a hybrid state. That solves a lot of problems for customers. I mean, we know that it works really, really well. But I think you have to start thinking about this because these things don't happen overnight. You can't decide to upgrade your Exchange server and then hope to have it done next week if you're a large environment. It takes a while.
Right.
It's
a lot of planning.
It is. And very often it includes upgrades to hardware and hypervisor and if you are virtualizing and OS levels, and then you go down this road of like, oh well, guess what? We need a new version of Windows, which we don't have packaged, and it can take a long time. So it's worth sort of thinking about. I think to summarize, though, like what exactly does this mean? Well, one, the first thing I'm hearing is right now, or the initial sort of deployment of this is going to be for Exchange 2007. If you're running an internal connector, or it's called internal connector, isn't it? Yes. So if you fall into that boat, we would hope that in 2023, that would be a small number of environments, right? I'm sure there may be some environments that have a really good reason for that, but you would hope in 2023 the number of organizations running Exchange 2007 is minimal.
Yeah.
Is it going to be every connection? No, it's going to be connections through those specific connectors. And is it going to happen straight away? No, it's going to be there's going to be some reporting. There's a reporting dashboard. There's going to be some other things, and then there's going to be a throttle before it eventually locks you out. So there's plenty of time to kind of figure out what's going on if you have an environment that you're not 100% familiar with. But like I said, I think don't rest on your laurels here. If you are in a running an unsupported or an out of support version, it's worth probably thinking about an upgrade.
And depending on your environment, if you're only using it for relay, you don't even have to replace it. Do an upgrade. I mean, you could replace it with a different type of MTA. You could even use IIS server if you wanted to. There's ways to secure that in Exchange Online so that they get passed through. They don't go through the same process, but they get treated as more trusted and less likely to get into a user's junk mail. It doesn't have to be Exchange as an upgrade. You could totally replace it with something else. They're just really protecting the service from those persistently vulnerable servers, and it's in your best interest to do the same.
Yeah, and if you have a very large environment that needs an upgrade and you don't have the time to do the upgrade before the enforcement happens, perhaps routing this through some third party MTA is an option for you as well. That solves the challenge of securing the mail coming into 365. So at least we know everything coming through from your third party of choice, be it Mimecast or Proofpoint or any of those ones. At least we know that we can trust that message because it's coming through there. How they handle that connection is entirely up to them, right? So that's something to think about. But you're absolutely right. I would venture to guess, and I have obviously absolutely no telemetry to back this up, but I would venture to guess the majority of these servers are exactly what you're saying. They are early adopters of the service, right? Early adopters of Exchange Online that built out hybrid environments a decade ago, and it was too hard to remediate all of the MFAs and the multifunction devices and all of the other things that were on-prem. So they've left some old servers in place because they don't have mailboxes on them, but they are just routing mail.
Right.
And they left them there because it was just, it's a pain to go and find everything that's been hard-coded to the IP address. Especially those old things that don't even do DNS, right? That's probably what a lot of this is.
Yeah.
And so, are those business critical? I mean, you would hope not, but maybe it's really important.
It's probably been 3 years since the last time I touched a customer who had 2007. But I mean, there are tools or scripts. I've got my own that collect SMTP talkers. Basically, it's a SQL script that you run, and it reports all of the IP addresses, and if it can do a reverse lookup on the name of the device that has sent mail through it in the last 30 days. Really helpful. You go out and then you find what those are and you remediate. Do whatever you're going to do. If you don't have very many, you could send it directly through the firewall to the cloud from that device, or you implement a new type of MTA internally that you would force everything through.
Yeah, because I think what's happened is a lot of, especially 10 years ago, a lot of these multifunction devices and things, they didn't do any SMTP auth, right? They just wanted an IP address, a port number, and that's it. And so you needed those anonymous connectors to do the relay. I think we've moved on quite a lot from that now. I think most manufacturers now will give you some level of auth on SMTP, so you can go direct if you really wanted to. So I think there are a lot of options here. This isn't
Mhm.
quite as dire as what people think.
Oh, not nearly.
I'm pretty supportive of this, honestly. I think it's,
I do too.
I think we need
Yeah.
to start getting rid of some of this old stuff. We can't preach zero trust and preach security in one breath, and on the other hand go, oh, but it's okay to have that old 2007 server sitting there, right? We can't do that. If you want to be secure, you've got to be secure everywhere. And I always use the example of that customer, and we all have that customer or that environment where they're super secure and they won't let you do anything, and you can't get access, and you have to view things over a secure terminal. And then when you look at the patch level of their servers, they're 3 years behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, you can't. If you want to be secure, you got to be consistently secure.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. One of the things we did before hitting record was look at licensing for if you were still running Exchange 2007 on-prem and you had no cloud footprint as far as licensing goes. What does that mean for you? Well, it means, yes, you're going to have to get probably some Windows licensing because you're going to need Windows Server. You're going to have to get an Exchange Server license for Exchange Server 2019 if that's where you're going to go. And then you're likely going to have to upgrade all your CALs as well.
Well, yeah, just to be clear, though, this is only for Exchange Online. We're not. They're not doing anything to shut down Exchange 2007. So if you have no presence in the cloud,
that's a good point.
You have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point.
I mean, well, you do. You're running Exchange 2007. You should be worried. But
Microsoft is not going to do anything.
Yeah, they're not going to be the cop that stops you from
doing that.
Yeah, from doing that. So if you have a presence in the cloud, it's I'm going to make an assumption that your mailboxes are all in the cloud, but that you may be still in hybrid. I mean, literally in hybrid, where you have some mailboxes on-prem and some in the cloud. In which case you need, when you do an upgrade, if you choose to do Exchange, and you would because you have mailboxes on-prem, I mean, you could always look at remigrating those to the cloud now and completely eliminate your on-prem mailbox experience. But if you have mailboxes on-prem and you are required to do an upgrade, then yeah, you are going to have to buy Exchange Server license. It will be running on a new version of Windows. That'll require a Windows license. And then there are CALs. There's CALs for Windows and there's CALs for Exchange. The CALs are not upgradable. So if you have a 2007 CALs, it won't run 2013. You have to get new CALs. And those are only for the mailboxes that are on-prem. If you have a presence, well, you obviously would have a presence in the cloud. If you have CALs for all your users, there are on-prem equivalency CALs that are included in your Exchange Online CAL. So when you have a license in Exchange, let's say you've got an E3 or a Business Premium or whatever in the cloud, that gives you rights to run Exchange it's a client access license that runs on-prem. So no need to upgrade those CALs. But you would have to buy the Windows Server.
And you know what? Just thinking about it, if you are upgrading Exchange 2007 on-prem, it's a double hop for you because you're not going to be able to go directly to 2019.
Right.
You're going to have to first go to 2013, right? And then decommission 2007.
Yes.
Then because 2013 is also end of support, you're probably going to want to go from there to 2019.
Correct.
So you're going to have to do a double hop, which is going to be a little bit of a challenge. So
now I'm not a licensing expert.
Neither am I.
Nobody is except for Gandalf. So we're don't quote me on this, but I guess you could, in theory, if you could do your double hop fast enough, there is a trial, Windows trial and an Exchange trial license that, or you're running in trial mode in Exchange. There's no trial license. And you could do that double hop quickly enough. You could then just finish on your last CAL and server license. That's as far as I'm going to go with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing. It is a lot of work, right? And the term sort of technical debt really does kind of describe it, right?
Yeah.
So look, I think the takeaway from this really is, I mean, yes, this is happening, but it isn't. It isn't as dire as certain parts of the press will make it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
There are options, and realistically, if you are running Exchange 2007 today, and you know about it, there are other things you should probably be looking at as well, right?
Right. The other thing I would mention is if you're running 2010, and there are a lot of customers out there running 2010, because like you said, it ran solid, right? That is no longer in support either. Yeah. It's just they're starting with 2007. So expect this to come to 2010 and 2013 relatively soon. You should be planning ahead and thinking about that. Here now, the people, the handful that are running 2007 with internal connectors have to think about it real soon.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity if you're on a older version that's no longer in support. That you should be looking at your strategy and decide, are you going to stay on-prem? Are you going to move them to the cloud? There are options to do management on-prem without an Exchange server using the Exchange 2019 management tools. You don't even have to run Exchange anymore. You'll have to have a different option for Relay if that's what you're requiring. Otherwise, for large enterprise customers, I see them mostly moving to an upgrade.
And I think Steve Goodman also has his console or portal that he's written that also helps with that management stuff. If you're a small enough environment, that's super useful.
Yeah.
So look at that as well, and I'll drop a link into that as well. I love the work Steve's done on that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you for your time. This has been
Thanks,
great.
Chris.
If anyone wants to find you or sort of follow you, social media, things like that, anything you want to plug?
Well, my blog is expta.com. You can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at expta. And I don't spend too much time on Twitter anymore. Me and Elon don't get along very well. But I do see the posts that go there. I don't use it so much. I'm happy to. You can. From my website, which is my regular business website, there's a contact form there.
Okay.
If you're interested.
Fantastic. Well, look, again, thank you very much for your time, and we'll look forward to catching up, for hanging out at least for the rest of the next couple of days.
Yeah, let's hope it's not another 3 years.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah. So, all right, thanks, Chris.
Cool.